person.
Yeah, I really wish I could be there this time.
Shall we start in like 5 minutes, just so that people can kind of can gather?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
in a
so
minute.
let's give it another 5 minutes. Make another cup of coffee if you have to.
I've made
Anna,
already. I'm drinking it.
You got it. Anna, is everything okay in Birzhastation? Is everything ready? Has everyone got wine?
Yes, it's
Okay. All right.
what? Wine? Yes, we have wine.
You have wine. You're holding some wine.
I need to get wine.
So we need to get some wine. That's why we're going to start in 5 minutes.
Oh.
Okay, you have like 5 minutes.
All right. Okay. All right.
Okay, we can start.
We can. Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me well? Can you see me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Then, hello Tbilisi, hello London, and other beautiful cities where Birzhastation has attracted interest. My name. Maybe you start first, Michelle. You should present me. Sorry. So, Misha, are you going to say something?
I thought we had 5 minutes, guys.
Okay.
No, we are 5 already.
London punctuality fetish is becoming global. Okay, let's get started.
I forgot.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for coming once again. Now, shall we? One question: are we recording this meeting?
No, it's secret. We are not recording.
We're not recording.
You know, on Birzha we can't record.
Well, we can record, but it depends.
It's Birzha.
It's Birzha. Okay. Okay. So no recording.
No witnessing, no recording, and so on.
Do Instagram Live as well.
Okay, all right. So no official recording of the. Does that mean that you can't record any of your presentations about Birzha?
No, please do it. But I just want to say that according to Steve's law and according to Gageva, you can't record anything that deals with Birzha and the street life. But as you like, up to you.
Well, I don't know, Anna and Dato, what do you think? Do you want to record this meeting or not?
We are already recording this meeting.
Oh, you're already recording.
Silently.
The silent voice of the censor. Okay, well then if you're recording it, then we don't need to know. Is Anna, just one question, is somebody manning the waiting room? Okay, I'll do it.
I don't think we have the co-host privileges on our side. Do we?
Director decided.
So we can add us as a co-host.
And so you are online. And thank you so much for being with us.
So we can start actually. Misha. I know.
Okay. There was just some sort of announcement that I missed. Okay, I'll do the waiting list. Anna, I've made you co-host so that you can admit people.
Okay.
And then now you can make other people.
I think we can. Misha, I think we can already start.
Okay, just make sure you're looking at the waiting list, if you can. Yeah. Lovely. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thanks so much to Dato and Anna and everybody whose names we don't know who built the Birzhastation with their own hands and their own pieces of wood and pieces of plastic in the last few days. It looks absolutely extraordinary, and we have massive Birzha FOMO as Pyramida that we cannot be in Tbilisi. Maybe next time. we're very excited that our Birzhastation program will be opened by an anthropologist who has devoted, as well as she told me just now, pretty much her entire PhD and much of her professional career so far to studying Birzha and to trying to make sense of this phenomenon. Her name is Evgenya Zakharova, and she's a researcher at the Peter the Great Museum of Anthropology and Ethnography, the Kunstkammer, which must be a strange and wonderful place to be affiliated to, the Russian Academy of Sciences. She obtained her doctoral degree in anthropology in 2017 with her dissertation entitled Men's Neighborhood Communities of Tbilisi, Structure and Functioning, which discusses the Georgian street as a social, political and legal phenomenon. I also want to introduce quickly my name is Michał Morawski. I'm a lecturer at UCL and a co-convener of PPV. And sitting next to me are my two co-conveners of PPV.
Yeah, I'm Ashley, and I'm a lecturer and art historian at the Courtauld Institute of Art in London.
And my name is Denis Maximov. I'm an independent curator.
Okay, so that's PPV, and this that's the Pyramida curatorial team as well, plus David Roberts, within the realms of which Birzhastation came into being a kind of anti-pyramidal, completely horizontal, rectangular pyramid. If nobody realized that such a thing was possible, the Tbilisi Architecture Biennial proved it wrong. So thanks a lot to Dato for his architectural or counter-architectural vision, and Anna for her intellectual and logistical guidance too. And I think we can start. Zhenya, you wanted to say a couple of other things about how you got onto the topic of Birzha.
Yeah, I have been researching Birzhas and more broadly the Georgian street for 10 years, since 2007. And I completed my fieldwork in 2012. And what I'm going to talk about today will be valid mostly for the 0 years. And despite this really long time spent, here, warning, I don't advise anyone to write your thesis for so long. The evolution of the Georgian street is a topic that still inspires me really. Now I'm busy with other projects, mainly related to Georgian traditionalism. But I hope that when this strange time in which we are living now ends, and I return to my fieldwork, I part of it to I will devote to the Georgian street again. So I will start. When we talk about Birzhas, we can't help but discuss issues of honor. It's no exaggeration to say that one of the main senses of Birzha is to be a stock exchange of honor. First of all, Birzha is about relationship. Remember the notorious saying, Tbilisi was a relationship. Tbilisi or Tiertuba. Today I would like to speak about the type of relationship that was not specific to Birzha, but was most characteristic of Birzha. I'm talking about the Makatsuba, a special type of friendship. It differs from more neutral Megabroba in the way that it is largely based on exchanges of honor. It is on Birzhas where the most vivid forms of the Makatsuba can be most easily seen. Birzhas, as the male peer groups which form on local basis, are one of the key institutions for neighborhood community and for Tbilisi street culture as well. Birzhas belong to the range of phenomena which sociologists and anthropologists commonly classify as street common societies. Quite recently, the street was one of the most important social institutions that organized youth in Georgia. When I say the street, I mean the specific discursive and practice space characteristic for Tbilisi and many other urban areas of Georgia. One could often hear the words Academy of the Street from those who share Georgian culture. This expression emphasizes the vital socializing role which was assigned by culture to this officially unrecognized educational institution. For those who share Georgian urban culture, the street is a specific setting that causes the whole spectrum of associations with showdowns, thieves in law mentality, street notions, or street gageba, the life of urban blocks, Ubani, and of course, its core, Birzhas. Till recently, the street played an important role in social network building, linking the young men first inside their neighborhood block and then wider and wider, so that the net of connections little by little covered the whole city map. In private Georgian conversations and even more often on the internet, one can often find attempts to give one's own sociological understanding to important and sensitive social phenomena which people observe and perceive in their everyday life. In these layman conversations, one can hear such folk conceptualizations as the Tamada institution, the institution of virginity, and finally, among the mentioned, the institution of Makatsuba. I will try to demonstrate my screen. Just a minute. Just a minute. It's not so easy as I thought. Do you see the screen? Yeah, I think you should. Okay. Sorry. How to exit it? Sorry, it's my first try. That's it. Sorry, too complicated. So, for those who share Georgian culture, you can often hear that Makatsuba with these special high values and obligations of friends to each other is unparalleled in other cultures. The word Makatsuba and Makatsi friend is formed by two roots, Zma, which means brother, and Katsi, meaning man. Makatsuba is an institutionalized and formalized form of friendship, where the relationship between friends is subject to certain rules. Makatsuba is a relationship of honor. These are honor exchanges that determine the main features of this form of friendship. Although Makatsuba is not limited to the street setting, in many ways this relationship is determined by the street code. The Makatsuba as a specific form of friendship originates from Birzha, and it's in this space that it most closely approaches its ideal type. My focus today will be on the Makatsuba and its various aspects as it functions in the context of the street and on Birzhas. I would like to invite you to consider a fragment of my interview on the Makatsuba where my interlocutor recollects his teenage years. Just a minute, I think that I managed to demonstrate my screen more quickly. Can you see the screen? So, about my Makatsubi, I was told, this is the quote from the interview, about one of my Makatsubi, I was told all the time that I have to break up with him because he looked somehow wrong, behaved in a wrong way. Once this Makatsu had a fight, after which he remained in minus, that is, he was beaten. If he beat, it was called to remain in plus. After the fight, he immediately made peace with those who beat him. You know, the one who remains in plus no longer wants further problems. He easily reconciles. Even before this incident, my Makatsubi kept bugging me that I should break up with him. However, there was another incident when this Makatsu of mine acted very courageously. Once in some confrontation, this Makatsu was asked, who are you Makatsubi? He named me. He was told that it wasn't true. After this incident, those Makatsubi came to me and said that since it happened, since he didn't respond to the insult, break up with him. Okay. To understand the logic followed by the narrators of the Makatsuba, we need to consider the hierarchy of street statuses. Georgian street culture exhibits the triad of street statuses typical of many street cultures in the world. They have their own designations, which are present not only in street jargon, but are understandable to everyone who shares Georgian culture. Georgian street system of social coordinates is built on three main positions. Zuelik Aibichi, old or good guy, it is the first. Then Patiosani or Vashkatsibichi, it means decent or courageous guy, and Chmuli or mama's boy. Actually, the obscene term for the male genital organ is more common here. The two most important positions that play the role of opposite poles in the street social hierarchy are Kaibichi and Chmoli. These two positions are largely determined by the degree of adherence to the street code, where Kaibichi is considered infallible in terms of the norm of the street code, and Chmoli is the one who least meets its standards. So the Makatsuba is largely governed by the street code, the street frame of reference that defines just and unjust. It is constituted by a set of instructions and norms denoted by any term Kuchuri Gageba or street notions. The street code, as a component of the street culture, has penetrated all strata of society. Those who adhere to it derive it from universal Soviet thieves' laws or понятия. Affiliation of street notion with the thieves' code is regarded as one of the grounds that determine its validity. At the same time, in Georgia, the street code is strongly associated with national ideas of manliness. Everything in conflict with street notion is prosecuted by severe sanctions. That is why you can't be friends with someone who violates the norms of the code, who makes mistakes, and has a low position in the street hierarchy. Kaibichi shouldn't have low status friends. If his friend is in serious violation of the code, the friendship could end. Justice is the highest value in the street culture. Justice and the code which asserts it is placed above the imperative to support one's relatives or friends. Thus, this is true at the level of discourse only. As young people gain experience, they see how others circumvent the requirements of the code if it is against their personal interest to follow strict rules. In reality, the code is used strategically. It is more a means of interpretation than a prescription. Igor Kohn, in his study of friendship, correlates the ideals of friendship with two types of society, which Yuri Lotman identified according to the prevailing way of assimilating culture. In some societies, it is a quote, cultural education occurs predominantly by an individual example, and in others by mastering a system of more or less general rules. The first type of learning, as more personal, dictates the primacy of devotion to the teacher over loyalty to his teaching. According to Igor Kohn, in such cultures, the normative ideal of friendship is also differ. In the first case, unconditional personal devotion to a friend is affirmed. So the principle is, what kind of friend is he to me if he judged me? And in the second case, the formula, Plato is my friend, but truth is a better friend. Therefore, what is deemed right in one culture will be wrong in another. If we try to apply the proposed typology to the norms of friendly relations on the Georgian street, then just formally, according to the prescriptions of the code, it will be among the social systems where truth is preferred. In fact, in real relationships, Plato is still a better friend than the truth. On Birzhas, the well-known saying, a man is known by the company he keeps, has a literal meaning. However, this shouldn't be understood in terms of the similarity of lifestyles, tastes, or attitudes among friends. It is honor and reputation of friends that is perceived to be not just common. The idea is that Makatsuba share the same reputation. One friend's miss automatically becomes another's honor damage. Likewise, one friend's positive reputation spreads to the other. This can be called the rule of common honor. My honor is the same as the honor of my friend, and vice versa. My honor is equivalent to the honor of my entire circle of friends, and vice versa. This extends even wider. My honor and the honor of my neighborhood are equivalent. Dzmakatsi can represent his friend in any street situations, act on his behalf or replace him in showdowns. The interchangeability of Dzmakatsi in matters of honor is so pronounced that formally Dzmakatsi don't act on behalf of each other. They are actually identical to each other, acting almost as doubles. The principle of common honor was at the heart of the widespread practice of revenge in the lawless 90s. In case of a conflict, revenge could be directed not at the offender himself, but at his friend. The principle of common honor is also vividly illustrated by the practice associated with gambling. The amount of money that is paid in case of loss in any of the gambling games, be they cards or slot machines, is called tavani. Gambling debt has a special status. If the money is not transferred at the appointed time, the loser becomes fuflo. The word is used to denote those whose status was downgraded as a result of non-payment of the gaming debt on time. The status of a fuflo on the street is extremely low. Anyone who has been declared fuflo and ceases to be kaibiti, being fuflo is a big shame. If the loser can't pay tavani on his own, his Makatsuba and even a wider circle of people together collect for him the necessary amount of money. It is customary to ask for money for the payment of tavani even from almost unknown people. If a rumor spreads that fuflo has appeared in the circle of Makatsuba, a shadow will fall on the reputation of both the court and the circle of Makatsuba, as well as the honor of each individual separately. The Makatsuba can be a personal affair of the two individuals participating in it, since their honor also affects the interests and honor of the groups to which these individuals belong. Protecting one's honor is the duty of the Makatsuba, not only in relation to themselves, but also towards each other. And thus the Makatsuba become a kind of visiting card for each other. In a conflict situation, it may be enough to name the common Makatsuba for the parties to abandon claims against each other. By acquiring the right to call someone his friend, a person gets the opportunity to use his name as a recommendation. Thanks to the rule of common honor, the Makatsuba acts as an important tool for building relationships of trust and expanding social connections on Birzhas. The principle of the common honor of the Makatsuba that operates on the streets and Birzhas of Tbilisi absolutely fits into the principle of equality in honor, which Pierre Bourdieu proposes in his practical reason. He considers the relationship of honor among other acts of exchange. According to Birzhastation, to comprehend all observed acts of honor, it is enough to trace the operation of one fundamental principle, the principle of equality of honor. Unlike unilateral violence or aggression, the exchange of honor, like any other exchange of gifts or of words, becomes possible because it implies the recognition of a partner. And that Makatsuba relationship is a relationship of honor exchange, which means that it can only be built and maintained between equals. That is why Makatsuba with the one whose status has been downgraded becomes impossible. Let's go back to the story of the already mentioned narrator. He did end his Makatsuba with his friend after his Makatsuba had insisted on him doing it. Here's how he talks about it. Now I will demonstrate my screen, which is always problematic. Okay. You see it, I hope. Now, the quote is as follows. Now I'm very ashamed when I remember this moment. This is one of the most painful moments. It is hard for me to remember it. I was playing for time. I couldn't dare to tell him that we are no longer the Makatsuba. But he had learned it earlier from someone. He asked me if it was true. I answered yes. He asked me why. I explained that because of this situation. But I say that it wouldn't affect our relationship. We will communicate as before. And what? Your relationship hasn't changed after that? Maybe after that we didn't see each other so often. That is, I gave preference to the gang of friends with which I then wanted to be. Then I was 12 years old. Now this Makati is one of my best friends. I have italicized the words that the end of the Makatsuba won't affect friends' relationships, and the friends will continue to communicate as before. At first glance, the phrase seems paradoxical. It highlights the status character of the Makatsuba and also the fact that the Makatsuba is perceived as a special form of friendship that is functionally different from the usual Megogroba. On Birzha, the relations between friends have their own specific features, their own normative prescriptions which differ from the norms of friendly relations outside the space of interaction. We see that the beginning and termination of the Makatsuba relationship must be indicated by the participants verbally. Until the establishment of the relationship is mutually confirmed, the participants cannot name each other's Makatsuba. The moments when a person gains or loses this right must be clearly mentioned and clearly marked. What does the narrator do when he announces to his friend the termination of the Makatsuba, but assures him of maintaining the old relationship? He informs his friend that in terms of mutual obligations of honor on the street, they are no longer bound. But outside the street, they retain an emotional friendship and the ability to socialize together. How can one determine the relationship that friends maintain after the Makatsuba ends? It is an emotional attachment that is outside the scope of the Makatsuba regulation. The normative attitudes of this kind of friendship are not regulated by the street code, but by other sources and agents, everyday ethics, examples from fiction, cinema, and partly by the family. Although male family members can also to varying degrees support the normative attitudes of the Makatsuba. This is an informal friendship as opposed to the Makatsuba, formalized friendship. According to the rules of the code, the Makatsubi are obliged to assist each other in street conflicts. Refusal is the reason for the loss of Kaibichi status. In turn, the duty to support the Makatsi is valid as long as he is right under the street code. It is important that this requirement applies not only to situations where the Makatsi's interests are personally affected, but also when the Makatsi asks for support for the sake of a third party. It becomes a tool to mobilize large masses of people. On a Georgia street, a person's influence and authority is largely determined by what kind of people and groups stand behind him. Largely thanks to the Makatsuba, by a certain age, a young man, if he is successful on the street, builds a network of reliable people. This network of connections extends beyond the boundaries of the neighborhood and covers the whole territory of the city. Having a strong peer group of the Makatsubi means not only having social capital and power resources, but also being competitive in winning women's favor. The young man's belonging to the popular circle of the Makatsubi that is reckoned with on the street, like his other street successes as well, is perceived by the opposite sex as a strong evidence of his authority and masculinity. The principle of shared honor, coupled with the requirement of compulsory help to the Makatsi, have the potential to transform circles of friends into strong and well-organized communities. When necessary, these communities can act in concert and thus be really effective. For example, during the turbulent time of the Civil War in Georgia in 1991-1993, some of the circles of friends were institutionalized. Some have evolved into Satsmoyeby fraternities, highly cohesive gangs, and engaged in economic activities provided and imposed protections and services. In addition to their guarantees of mandatory support provided by the formalized friendship, Makatsuba, there is a downside as well. The peer group of the Makatsubi becomes for a young person not only a bag and support, but also peer collective that sets a right for a framework for his life. Just a minute. This is, I will show a slide. Okay, so this is this deals with their well-known movie Journey to Karabakh. Just a minute. It is based on Aka Marchuladi's movie with the same name. The film tells about the unsettled life of a young man in Georgia in the 90s. There is a storyline dedicated to the character's love for a girl of loose morals. In addition to the young man's family, it is his Sadmakatso or circle of friends who makes the most active efforts to prevent the lovers from being together. The nature of the formalized friendship, the Makatsuba, is also clarified through the idea of the prohibition of love, sexual, marital relations with the Makatsi sister, which is common on the street. In the interest of brevity, I will call this prohibition the sister's taboo. On one of the popular Georgian language internet forums, a young man tells in the first person the story of his friend, the only son, and Georgian Vashkatsi, Georgian brave, who falls in love with his Dmakatsi sister. The narrator advised him to confess his feelings to the girl's brother and ask for her hand in marriage. The young man followed the advice. Dmakatsi declares him a betrayer and shoots a bullet at him. Regardless of whether this story is folklore or true to life, it illustrates the real idea of a ban on relationship with the Dmakatsi's sister. Let me make a reservation right away that opinions on the validity and legitimacy of this ban vary. This topic causes heated discussions, for example, in the internet space. In general, supporters of this ban appeal to traditionalism, while opponents appeal to modernist discourse. Opponents of this norm associated with backwardness, savagery, limitedness, Asianism. Supporters, in turn, accuse their opponents of being overly European, associate the sisters' taboo with Georgian traditional values, and the rejection of it with European sexual promiscuity. The rejection of this taboo is perceived as the rejection of the institution of the Makatsuba as a whole. Like many other street norms of behavior, sisters' taboo is associated with these rules, but it is also customary to explain it by universal moral and ethical norms, Georgian masculine code, religious canons, and ethnographic tradition. Not only the origin, but also the logic of prohibition is controversial. One of the common explanations is as follows. The brother, as one of the closest male relatives of the sister, is charged with the responsibility of protecting her female honor. And if the sister is in a relationship with his Makatsi, a conflict of loyalties arises. The difficulty of accepting the possibility of sexual relationships between sister and Makati is also often mentioned as a reason. Another possible explanation for the logic of sister taboo is associated with the fact that the Makatsuba relationship is seen as brotherhood. The very morphological root, meaning brother in the word Makatsi, is used as an argument in favor of a literal interpretation of the Makatsuba relationship as a fraternal. Makatsuba is associated with the blood brotherhood relations known from ethnography. This relationship was especially widespread in the past in the mountainous regions of Georgia and is interpreted as the most ancient Georgian unwritten law. Ethnographers observed blood brotherhood as a living practice as late as in the 80s of the last century. In these years, Tamara Dragadze, well-known anthropologist who worked in Georgia, described it for rural parts of Ratia province. Only those of equal age and social status, not only men but also women, could enter into blood brotherhood relationship. Also, people of different sex could enter into this relationship. So, a girl, a woman, and a man also can be blood siblings, or vice versa. Dragadze writes about three categories of kinship that were distinguished by the inhabitants of the Rachi province. There's birth kinship, relation by marriage, and spiritual kinship. Blood brotherhood, together with suckling kinship and kinship through baptism, refer to spiritual kinship. The position of spirituality and sexuality translates into the position of birth kinship to spiritual kinship. In the case of birth kinship, cousins several times removed cannot marry each other. In the case of spiritual kinship, the number of generations when they can't marry doubles to 14, as much as 14. Thus, the sister taboo can be explained by the fact that the Makatsuba is associated with spiritual kinship. The Makatsubi are credited with brotherly ties. This is believed to automatically rule out any sexuality in the relationships with the sister of the Makatsu. Generally, a strong tendency towards exogamy persists in Georgian culture. It is believed that if a guy and a girl grew up in the same neighborhood, it is unlikely for them to enter sexual or marital relationship. Unlike sisters taboo, in this case there is no verbalized prohibition, but it is considered better and more natural to look for a pair somewhere else, that is further away. It is known that a long history of growing up in close proximity leaves an imprint on relationships of children. Romance rarely happens between such young people. For example, in Israeli kibbutzim, endogamous marriage is considered incestuous. Marriage of children who grew up in Russian communal apartments are also extremely rare. In an exaggerated way, the exogamous feelings of urban youth are reflected in a quote from an internet discussion on the Dzmakati's sister problem. Just a minute. Here it is. There was one DJ on the radio, Daphne. He had a program, a woman and a man. Once a girl called and she was like, I like my classmate, but falling in love with a classmate is a bummer. Well, this Daphne listened to her and said, what is it? Falling in love with a classmate is a bummer. Falling in love with a neighbor is a bummer. Falling in love with Makatsi is a bummer. Falling in love with a friend's brother. What is going on, people? Have we decided not to reproduce anymore? Thus, the exogamous views characteristic of urban Georgia extend not only to those who share who share ancestry, but it can also extend to representatives of one social group. It seems that the sisters' taboo originates in these views too. Violation of the taboo is associated not with the biological incest, but with the incest understood in the broader sense. Thus, one of the participants in the internet discussion explained the taboo by the fact that the Makatsuba are the closest people to each other. In other words, they are part of primary social group. In Georgian culture, it is relationships of kinship that involve the strongest commitments and the most unshakable ties. The Makatsuba relationship reflects the need through the construction of kinship to ensure those obligations and that trust that in this culture can be guaranteed primarily, if not exclusively, by kinship. What makes the Makatsuba relationship a brotherly one? In other words, by what means is kinship constructed? Unlike the blood brotherhood relations described by Drogadze, entering which requires a blood mixing ritual, the Makatsuba doesn't require such a ritual or any similar ritual. Although such cases are sometimes reported, they are perceived only as an arbitrary romantic gesture, but not at all as a mandatory procedure that is necessary to enter into this relationship. The anthropologist, well-known anthropologist Janet Karsten, in her After Kinship, in which she tries to get rid of the position of biological and social kinship, show that it is the sharing of the same home space and the joint meal in the family that become the factors through which kinship is not given but created, constructed. According to Janet Karsten, sharing the same house and food is such an intense experience that the two processes gradually create a relationship even between those who are not linked by biological ties. Many narratives of the Makatsuba mention these two aspects. I mean, food and sharing the common home. For example, one of my interlocutors drew attention to the fact that he can come to a friend's house in his absence, take his clothes, or ask his parents for them. It is emphasized that the family of the Makatsi should accept a friend as a close person too. It is implied that in his turn, Makatsi also has serious obligations toward the friend's family. Consider the quote. Well, let's say he died, right? His parents are your parents, his wife and children are like your daughter-in-law and your own sister, and you must take care of his children too. I told you when my child died, the narrator was in prison at that moment, he was buried by my Makatsuba. And when I came back, the first thing my mother said was, God bless your Makatsuba. I didn't feel like you weren't here at all. Street discourse defines the relationship with the Makatsi family as pure and the family itself as a holy temple. It seems that on the street, just as in the relationship of spiritual kinship described by Drogadze, we are dealing with a tendency to exclude any sexual component from a relationship with Makatsi's family members. The ideology of the Makatsuba is based on the concept of kinship, of kinship and brotherhood, what we discussed just before. But the discourse and to some extent even the practices of the Makatsuba also allow us to draw some parallels with romantic love. You will see in which way. The Makatsuba relationship is understood primarily as dyadic. Although Makatsuba can form Satsmakatsu or a circle of friends. The starting point for this relationship is a bond between two friends. So ideal Makatsuba is between two. The stories told about Makatsuba are often dramatic and romantic. It is often emphasized that the Makatsuba should know absolutely everything about each other. The relationship between them should be as open as possible. For example, this is what my 22 years old friend says about his Makatsuba. If I come to Nico and say that I need to get money somewhere, if he stays at home or doesn't take it to heart, I will also stay at home. Where can I go when we are like one body, one person? My joy is your joy, my difficulties are your difficulties. I agree with anthropologist Martin Fredrickson, who also made a research on Birzhas and male culture in Georgia, that the described ways of expressing feelings don't imply a sexual context. The point of such stories is to illustrate the exceptional and highly valuable closeness of the relationships with friends. This form of manifestations of feelings is just determined by culture. Let's try to summarize the above. Birzha as a social and physical space offers specific social practices and forms, and the Makatsuba relationship is just one example of many. Acquaintance with the social practices and culture of Birzha is a good starting point for those who want to gain a deeper understanding of Georgian informality. The Makatsuba is an institutionalized way of creating social kinship, that is, strong bond between people. It is the building block by which other types of social connections are built in the city. The Makatsuba, thanks to its rigidly prescribed obligations, provides great social support, but in return requires adherence to certain standards of behavior. Usually these are traditionalist standards, but we see that in reality these standards can be used instrumentally and interpreted freely. Similarly, as the street code is interpreted freely and is used instrumentally. The Makatsuba is a way to expand networks of trust on Birzhas, on the street, and beyond by the means of constructing kinship. As Marx and Altman wrote, trust, the quote, trust is the basis of honor. A man who is not trusted has no honor. A man without honor cannot be trusted. This form of friendship, on the one hand, is nurtured from the street culture. On the other, parallels can be drawn with the Caucasian custom of blood brotherhood and exogamous attitudes characteristic of Georgian culture. If we turn to the important work of Marx and Altman again, we read, the individual Georgians see honor accruing to families and sees families linked by a common honor. In such a context, there is little role for the state or for any centrally organized hierarchy. Relationships need always to be personalized, and abstraction has no place. The Makatsuba, that is so characteristic of Birzha, uses family or kinship model too. The question naturally arises, will such social forms as Birzha and Makatsuba vanish with the strengthening of the state? Are they compatible with a strong state? Can we observe any signs of depersonalization of relationships in today's urban Georgia? Maybe some of you would like to say something on these issues today or in tomorrow's discussion. Please feel free to speak on those things I have mentioned in my presentation. Maybe have ideas which are not closely connected. So all your ideas and all your reflection is highly welcome. Please.
Evgenya, thank you so much for your presentation. There was a few technical problems at our end. The internet kept finishing, so we didn't completely get the whole of your presentation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but that's okay. So I think it's my internet is just shit.
I see.
Britain is falling apart. We have no forms of birja. That's why everything's bad. But I think that we're partly because of these.
And what about the rest? Have the rest got all of my presentations till the end? Or it was a problem only with your internet, Michal?
No, I think mostly at my end, but there were some technical issues, so we were a little bit short on time.
I see.
We need to finish quite soon because we've got until like 7 o'clock, I think, officially. Okay,
but we can discuss tomorrow. On Sunday, when Misha will organize a discussion on the topic, because I think that there will be a free discussion.
Well, yeah, but I think maybe if there's time for if somebody has I mean, I have many questions, but if there's a particular question that anybody in the audience, whether in Tbilisi or on Zoom, wants to ask now, just a couple of quick questions, then I think that would be good. Just so if anybody has a question, please to Zhenya on the basis of what she said or on the basis of what she's written in her abstract or any other Birzha curiosity, please ask.
Yeah. If anyone has a question here, no? Any questions?
Costanza has a question.
Oh. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, finally.
almost in person. Yes, I can.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for the talk. I agree. I have a lot of questions, but I think they are a bit more general, and we can probably use it for discussion on Sunday.
You have got the presentation till the end, yeah?
My question, like maybe a little more specific, which might also be sort of opening for further discussion. You closed with a question about like whether Makatsuba and this kind of like relationship would be compatible with the sort of like a strong state or like strong, let's say, formal institution. So my question is like during your fieldwork, because it seems you have done like a fieldwork which was quite long in time. Have you had the chance to see like this understanding and also practices of Makatsuba changing, not only according to maybe the political sort of surroundings, so maybe like a state being and like more or less kind of invasive in the life of the street, but also according to people specific wishes of like relating to one another in terms of friendship, in terms of love, and in terms of what they likely to do. Could you see this difference like across time when you were on the field?
There really were changes, and changes could be observed. For example, maybe it is not the first example that I have remembered, not so much maybe connected with Makatsuba, but still, during Saakashvili time, their social services, for example, of keeping the city clean, of volunteering in the city, were very popular. And many young people, the boys enrolled in such services, which was quite impossible before, to put on the uniform, to serve the state. I have wrote down, put down the interview, recorded the interviews where they discussed this issue. That it was really we couldn't just think of taking part in such an initiative, but now everything has changed. We look with another eyes on these issues. What's wrong with it? It's okay, and so on. And as for the code, as for the street code, for example, many things were not mandatory anymore. Code wasn't mandatory at all. You know, it is an interpretive means, not it is only on the surface an imperative, but really it is interpretive. But during Saakashvili times, it was like a gravity to say openly that I can violate the code. I can afford not to follow it. And it was new. It was really new, and these brave people appeared, and the boys whom I interviewed really told me that they feel the relations were changing. Thank you very much. Maybe more questions?
Hi.
Yeah.
Do we have a question? Шкетхоби хора, как чем тховит? I think we don't have a questions, and thank you.
Okay, maybe on Sunday
Hi.
I will be able to take part.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zhenya.
Yes.
And I encourage everyone who couldn't quite hear because of the sound or for any other reasons or because of the internet or because of other reasons to look up Evgenya Zakharova and Academia, and you can download her publications and you can read all of her excellent publications and prepare yourselves for the conversation on Sunday with Nisha. So thank you.
Thank you for the advertisement.
Thank you for laying the groundwork for our discussion and providing a fascinating insight into Birzha and to everyone for hosting. And we can't wait to see you again in this magical space on Sunday.
Thank you, Evgenia.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Come closer, everyone. Wait.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Nice to meet you, and bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to just